Hi guys. So it is that rare day that usually happens every 8 years where there are two US presidents on one day. It is of course Inauguration Day, where America and the rest of the world says goodbye to Barack Obama and Donald Trump is being sworn in. We've all been on this journey together, and mostly today it's time that won't let us sit down and deconstruct every step on the way that got us here to this day. But it is a poignant day. It really is an important day. And I wanted to take a moment and be clear. Because actually this morning, watching the American news stations and the ones here in the UK and looking through social media, I got the sense that at this crossroads, it's not clear. And maybe the best that I can do is to be true to where I think we stand and be clear, not whitewash Barack Obama, Donald Trump, or the seriousness of the moment we're in. So firstly, on the outgoing President Barack Obama, I remember 2007 and his campaign to election. I remember Yes We Can and the public donations pouring in and young people getting involved. I remember Obama being black and how that fact alone polarised either for him or against him at the ballot box. I also remember being vocally anti-Obama at a time where there was emotional, over-the-top, romanticised furore about him. I was in my very early 20s then, and I don't think I realised it at the time, but I have realised it now that he's leaving, that actually my criticism wasn't really of Obama. It was of us. It was a criticism of how we were viewing Obama and the pedestal that we were putting him on. I watched with enthusiasm people getting politically engaged because they thought and believed and wanted change. And the thing is, I may have criticised, but on Obama's first inauguration in 2008, I sat on my living room floor and I cried. My car, I remember, came to pick me up for work and I didn't answer my doorbell. It's okay, I thought. I could be late that day. I wasn't crying because I really liked Obama and I was really happy he won. I cried because I saw young black women in the audience crying and old civil rights activists. I cried feeling for them what they were feeling. I cried because white America elected Barack Obama. I felt those emotions. But I was also emotional because I knew it wasn't the change that was needed, by the fact that even his promises didn't go far enough. I knew that a few shades darker and Obama would not have won. And I knew he wasn't the black president my favourite rapper growing up talked about. My criticism, my reluctance to just let the positive, emotional, happy bubble just float around was that I realised that we, the world, really needed Americans to understand this too. I was in the Middle East at the time, so I was privileged enough to watch my own privilege in action. I got to witness people and communities and societies outside of our secular, liberal, Western democracy bubble and see how they viewed us. Whilst understanding the positives, they saw through Obama. History will be very kind to Obama, and actually he probably is one of the best American presidents we've ever had, especially domestically, where he's made massive changes to things like healthcare that really are historic. However, the world is not America. The Council of Foreign Relations says that in 2016, Obama's America dropped 26,171 bombs. That's just in 2016. The real figure, of course, is higher because A, the Pentagon classes multiple bombs as one strike, and it's that one strike that gets counted in that score. And secondly, or B, because there's lots of bombs that we never get to hear about officially. But let's just take that figure as a bare minimum. 26,171 bombs in 2016. That's over 71 bombs a day last year. Outside of our bubble, where the rest of the world is, they don't see America and Obama the same way. Not because they're black or African or Muslim, not because they're Arab or illiterate or immigrants or backwards, but because their bubble burst a long time ago, probably by one of Obama's bombs. To the rest of the world, Donald Trump is not as far away from Barack Obama as he is to us. The fear we now feel of the unknown, of what this US president might do to impact our lives, is not a new fear for arguably the majority of the people in this world. We have the luxury that it is only now that our bubble is beginning to burst. This week, in his final speech as Vice President, Joe Biden gave a special address to the World Economic Forum in Davos, the annual gathering of the global elite. You know, last year Oxfam said that 1% of this world, in other words, the participants of Davos, have more wealth than everybody else in the world combined. That is a real statistic to ponder. Anyway, going back to Biden's comments, they were really, let's say, insightful. This is Biden, the man from the memes, the guy with the cute, like cat videos on YouTube bromance with Obama. And in his speech, he said this, and I'm quoting here: "For the past 7 decades, the choices we have made, particularly the United States and our allies in Europe, have steered our world down a clear path. Our careful attention to building and sustaining a liberal international order with the United States and Europe at its core, strengthening these values is paramount to retaining the position of leadership for Western nations." He went on to say that 2 things were threatening this power, one from the inside and one from the outside. Inside the country, he blamed technology and the fact that wealth hadn't been distributed properly. But that wasn't the biggest threat. No, the biggest threat was Russia, Iran, and China. He made that clear. I mean, he said, "I want to make it clear that I'm not referring to the imminent transition of power in my country." So what did he say about Trump? He said this, and again I quote, "In 2 days, the United States will engage in the act that has defined our exceptional democracy for more than 200 years, the peaceful transition of power from one leader and one political party to another. And it is my hope," he said, "my hope and expectation that the next president and vice president and our leaders in Congress will ensure that the United States continues to fulfill our historic responsibility as the indispensable nation." So what did he mean? The indispensable nation of what? Well, by his own words, the Western liberal international order. Speeches like this are important because we need to recognise that Donald Trump is seen, even by the establishment, as a continuation of the establishment. Not the preferred continuation, not a continuation that they would have fought tooth and nail to avoid, but a continuation. In his speech, Biden spoke of 2 really important timelines that I want to discuss: the last 7 decades that we'll get to, and the last 200 years. He said, for 2 centuries there's been a peaceful transition of an exceptional democracy. But that has happened through a very narrow lens, where on the outside of that celebration, the native and indigenous populations have been massacred, Africans have been shipped and enslaved, the civil rights of Black Americans have been robbed and pillaged. It's not wise and it's not helpful to look at these moments and say that was history, just because they don't exist in your present life. Because they still exist. As Donald Trump was being elected, Native Americans were being shot at for fighting for their land in Dakota. They were fighting for land and for water. Black Lives Matter exists now because racism still does. Black men are still incarcerated at systemic levels, but then they're looked at as if they are the problem. These are all problems that belong to a system headed at one point by George W. Bush and then handed over to Barack Obama, and Barack Obama is handing it over to Donald Trump willingly, and they will all be there attending the inauguration. The whole system will be there. The championing of Hillary Clinton or the Thank You Obama hashtag trending today shows that we haven't realised that our champions are part of the problem. As Joe Biden explained in his speech, the elite got the equation wrong by not giving enough to the masses that ensure power is maintained. He's basically saying, look, Trump is here because we got the equation wrong. We need to retune the balance inside the country to allow a power to be maintained at its optimum level. But as he said himself, Trump, the far right, racism, Breitbart, the people in the cabinet that Trump wants to put in, they are not seen as the real danger. The real danger is those who want to take American and European power away, regardless of whether America is treating people well or not. It is a fundamental flaw in our paradigm. And actually, now is the time that it's really important that we start understanding this. Not because we are anti-Western or anti-American or anti-European, but because we are Western, we are American, we are European, we are British. We will continue to be these things, even if we say we don't like how the elite is running our countries. There's no point of being in uproar about Donald Trump's wall when it is an indoctrinated, systematic Islamophobia and racism across the political spectrum and media outlets from left to right as a whole that have facilitated and pushed us to become the type of societies that accept Donald Trump's nonsense. He used to be a Democrat, then he became a Republican, now he's president. For all we know, he's just riding the wave and doesn't believe a word of what he spews. He has put the far right into office, but the bottom line is this, all the political wording and rhetoric aside, who in the American political establishment is actually stopping this from happening? These are real questions that we have to ask. What does it mean when we start championing and facilitating the type of democracies that tolerate fascism being in power? Joe Biden in that speech also talked about the last 70 years, where, as he said, America and Europe have steered our world down a clear path. That's basically since World War II in the 30s. And here we are today, constantly talking about comparisons to the 1930s, to Nazi Germany, about Muslim registration, walls, refugee camps, Hitler. We're almost fearful of accepting that it is a fair comparison to today. We don't want to accept that we live in a world, that we belong to societies, that we make up the type of societies that could ever let that happen. We won't listen to those who know better and who are telling us it is. This week I spent several hours discussing with UC Berkeley Professor Ramon Grossvogel the exact same topic. He made it very clear. The ingredients are there, the comparisons are real. This is what we're facing. We seem to think that because we saw what happened in the end with hindsight, that the lead up to the atrocities against the Jews didn't look like our world today. That the political establishment didn't tolerate the toxic sentiments in the lead up to that catastrophe, that our political leaders weren't soft on the issues until they couldn't be anymore, that they didn't just say, Hitler is Germany's leader, that the toxic environment of hate was fueled by the propaganda coming out of a deep recession, that patriotism showed its ugly side. I can't count the times the same American media that went for Donald Trump's blood in the campaigning and election period toned down their rhetoric today, as they told us Trump's tone has changed, that despite it all, this is America and this is democracy, as they try to glue together the different parts of the broken editorial, putting in patriotism, excitement, protest, all together and still somehow maintaining that America is still the greatest nation on earth. The media dealt with Trump the way it did because, like everybody else in the establishment, they wanted America to run at an optimum, but within the pendulum that allows that to happen. Not because they will stand up and reject clearly what Donald Trump says he stands for now that he is president. It's already been watered down to dangerous levels, and he's only just getting power today. So it's really important that we are clear. Donald Trump is a trajectory, but he is a continuation. And it falls on each and every one of us not to romanticize and call for us just to straighten the path back to the way it was before Donald Trump, to straighten it back to Obama or Clinton, or to that middle of the way left that has got us in America and Europe into so much trouble. We need to realise that maybe Trump is a consequence of the fact that we didn't change the trajectory towards the correct direction to begin with, that we went along with a path that needed change, but we only viewed the extent of that change comparative to our own bubble, and that we're only catching up to the consequences now that our bubble is bursting. I'll conclude by saying this, that this isn't a day to be emotional or despondent or nostalgic. It's not a day to despair. It's a day to decide that you will stand up, be heard, be counted, so that whatever is coming our way in the coming days, months and years, when we look back at this moment, we can count ourselves as people who are on the right side of history.